Welcome to the Liturgy Resources Podcast, where we talk about the liturgy, liturgical music, and Catholic worship from the perspective of a priest. Hi, I'm Father Kyle Sanders and a musician.
Hi, I'm Eric Wilkes.
We're glad that you could join us this week for episode 52 as we continue to talk about Pope Pius XII's encyclical letter on the liturgy, Mediator Dei. So I'm excited to continue to go through this document. So far, we've only hit five paragraphs, and it's been awesome.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see what well, I know what he's going to say because I looked at it beforehand, but
Spoiler.
yeah, I can't. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to say for this. So let's get into it. Paragraph 6. You are surely well aware that this apostolic see has made careful provision for the schooling of the people committed to its charge in the correct spirit and practice of the liturgy, and that has been no less careful to insist that the sacred rites should be performed with due external dignity. In this connection, we ourselves, in the course of our traditional address to the Lenten preachers of this gracious city of Rome in 1943, urged them warmly to exhort their respective hearers to more faithful participation in the Eucharistic sacrifice. Only a short while previously, with the design of rendering the prayers of the liturgy more correctly understood and their truth and unction more easy to perceive, we arranged to have the Book of Psalms, which forms such an important part of these prayers in the Catholic Church, translated again into Latin from their original text, which was primarily used for that last part, primarily used for the changing and the translation for the breviary for the divine office, because that's the main part. The Psalms are a main part of that, and so what he did is using more ancient texts, right, to kind of connect that, using the kind of not the change, but the addition of new ways of looking at the scriptures through the language in particular, which really hadn't been done since Jerome.
It's been a minute.
So like the studying of Hebrew and Greek and really diving into those, that wasn't a regular part of. So yeah, did a retranslation of that. But what I really want to talk about is this address that he gives to the priests in Rome in 1943, because it is chock full of awesomeness. He basically he gathers the priests, right? The bishop, the Rome,
We're excited. We are excited.
Yeah, the Pope is the Bishop of Rome, so he has full responsibility of the priests of Rome, and so he will often speak to the priests of Rome, especially during Lent. That's been a tradition for a long time. And so in 1943, he gives this address teaching them and encouraging them to be preachers on prayer. So he begins the conversation, and we're going to be using this text. The text was we can only get it in the Latin. But we use this awesome Google Translate. So what we have is the Google translation of the Italian, and not Latin, in the Italian into the English. So it'll have some. It could be clearer, but I can't read Italian. And once I started reading this, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Anyway, he starts by talking about how Rome, especially over the centuries, was a city of prayer. First in the homes of the first Christians, then in the catacombs, then in the first churches, and then in the grandiose basilicas. And then he drops this line, which is so awesome. The tombs of Peter and Paul, of how many vows and longings were not the destination for many saints. and saints, for ardent spirits who on the sacred banks of the Tiber learned the liturgical songs and the devoted anthems of worship to God, which then made resonate in their homeland and in other lands, in their churches, in their retreats, and in their monasteries.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like almost like Rome is the heart of our cultural worship, our culture of worship, and our culture of prayer, and our culture of song. Like
Yeah.
that
Wow.
Rome has always been this heart of that.
Yeah.
And he's telling this to the priest of Rome, maybe encouraging them to live up to that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I don't know what was going on in the Diocese of Rome in 1943, other than the fact that, you know, Mussolini was just deposed, and
Yeah.
like there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, a few things happening. Yeah.
The Nazis were just kicked out, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So yeah, then he continues on a little bit later, talking about prayer and how since then there's been this kind of lessening of the life of prayer. And he says, if all visible creation sings the praise of God in powerful chords from the firmament to the earth, resonating in sublime harmony for the spaces of the universe, how could man, to whom the Creator gives to see clearly his eternal power and divinity in his works, withdraw from the great choir of the heavens and all the creatures that are around him, and exempt himself from the duty to bless God, to worship him, and to praise him?
Oh my gosh. What?
That's the most eloquent dig.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, how could you, like, essentially, how could you not praise God? Right. Like,
right.
but the way, oh my goodness, this man is a poet. This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful.
But like he's really sort of like what Jesus says, even the rocks will praise me.
Yeah.
Right. What he's doing is he's echoing this reminder of Christ that like all of creation gives glory to the Lord. Should we not do the same? And why do we exempt ourselves from that?
Whew.
And then he continues on, like he challenging, really pushing, right? He's talking to the priests, really challenging them to be courageous preachers.
Yeah.
We have already mentioned another class of men, of whom, for the division they show between religious life and civil life, it is said that on Sunday morning they appear Christians, but in the rest of the time they do not give any sign of religious or Christian life. Victims as they are of the separation of life from religion, of the world from the church, live a double contrasting existence, swinging between God and the enemy world. Sad fruit of the secular imprint of public life. What is there ever more against the Catholic sense of this practical division? The Church will always, and with every energy, oppose this way of life, aware of its spirit to form the whole man in all its relations of daily life, because man has a single soul, redeemed, and with the blood of Christ made a daughter of God for all the events and circumstances of life, both private and public. Therefore the Church, according to the commandment of God and the law of Christ, begins the formation of the Christian from within, through the life of prayer. High and divine is his pedagogy, and the conduct of his pedagogical method dating back to his earliest days. And I think his should be her. I think that's in reference to the Church.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
But like he really elevates, and you think about it, like that's a struggle that we see now, right?
Yeah.
That you're a Catholic, you go to mass, and then the rest of the kind of life, what Pope Benedict the 16th called the practical atheism, right?
Right.
That we say we believe, but we don't like necessarily live out that belief.
Right.
But it's good for us to hear in 2025 that that was also a struggle in 1943
Yeah.
in the city
Yeah.
of Rome. Like
Yeah,
this,
that's very telling.
like
Yeah.
we would say, well, this is a new thing. Well, no,
Right. Yeah, this
this is,
battle has always
yeah,
been. Yeah, I actually I was thinking of that. Someone posted a picture of their like grandparents, and it was like in the 1950s, and they were like, this was a time of class and excellence, and it's like, well, I think it's very easy to kind of idealize in general, and there's definitely some truth to that
for
in some
sure,
regards.
for sure.
But then there's also some of the things that, like, we look back and there were things that we weren't aware of that were going on that you're like,
Right,
okay, like that, the struggle, yeah, like you said, the struggle is there, and yeah, as a a modern like father, it's like finding a way to infuse the faith into home life is like my wife and I, we want to do that, and it's challenging. Like, we have willing spirits to do that. We are aware
right.
of like that we can do that even,
Yeah.
and it's still finding, like, making space for that and being very intentional about that. Um, it can be a challenge. So it's like, yeah, of course, somebody who might not be aware of that, or just they're just human. We're all human, and
Right. We get
so
distracted.
it's
It's
like,
so easy to get
yeah,
distracted in the
yeah,
life of the world. And
absolutely,
most of that life is not evil,
right, yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's not bad. It's just it's not God. Like
right, yeah, right,
like yeah. And so it's not, I think it's reminding ourselves of the highest good.
yeah,
Um and returning to that. But you were talking about family. He then goes to talk about prayer in the family,
mm,
right? He telling the priests, he says, awaken in the faithful the feeling for the ancient and usual prayer of common prayer in the family.
mm,
An air of sanctuary before some sacred images breathes you to the usual hours, and prayer is attentive, devoted, adapted to the circumstances of time and action and work, and accomplished in a way that the children do not feel tired or uncomfortable, but
mm,
feel rather encouraged to increase it. The common prayer in the home hearth is a sight worthy of angels.
yeah,
And since public life, so
uh,
distracted and insidious, too often endangers the most precious assets of the family, marital fidelity, faith, virtue, and innocence of children, prayer in the domestic sanctuary, which is a great phrase, prayer
yeah,
in the domestic sanctuary is today almost more necessary than in the past when a single Christian civilization flourished in Rome.
mm,
The image of a mother praying, the mother of a praying family is a vision of God's grace for man and for children, and the memory of a father who, in his profession, perhaps in high positions, did great things, remaining pious and devoted, not infrequently succeeds as an animator and salvation to the young man in the dangers and spiritual struggles of the most mature age. In other
wow,
words, what he say, like the influence of parents is indispensable, and it
yeah,
affects the person even into their old age,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I was listening to this interview. He's a professor, and he was talking about his dad, and he was like, when I was younger, I thought my dad could like lift a house because he
yeah,
was strong, but he was actually like a math teacher or whatever. And so he's like, obviously, as an adult, I know now that he probably couldn't do that, but I just viewed my dad as a strong person. And he's like, but every Sunday we would go to church and he would be on his knees, which told me that there's something even more powerful than my dad. And so
dang,
yeah, so it's like that really is, to see, for a kid to see probably the strongest people in their lives for such a long time yield to something stronger than themselves. I mean, that shows them. I mean, for our kids, we are the source of their food and their entertainment and
yeah,
their care and their hygiene and whatever else. And so it's like to then see us go to mass and kneel and, and reverence, Jesus in the Eucharist. And, hopefully sends that message to them that there's something bigger here. And so I love the way that he captured that, with, like, he just painted that picture so well.
Yeah, I and I can even like we both can see that in ourselves, and just the influence of our parents and
Yeah.
grandparents in the life of faith. And I'm sure you, dear listener and watcher, can say the same. That part of the reason that we have this life of faith that we have is because we saw the witness of somebody in our family, or if we did not have that gift, certainly a friend or a mentor that led us to that. But then
Yeah.
he doubles down. But the sanctuary of the family, no matter how beautiful, decent, and well kept it is not the church. What do you mean, like in the church, like mass? Your duty is the solicitude to ensure that Sunday becomes the day of the Lord again. And the
Mm.
Holy Mass is the center of the Christian life, the most sacred food of body rest and the virtuous constancy of the spirit. Sunday must be the day of rest in God, of worship, of begging, of thanking, of invoking from the Lord the forgiveness of the faults committed in the past week, of imploring the graces of light and spiritual strength for the days of the week that begins. Remind the people that Sunday is the perennial memory of the day of the resurrection of the Lord, that man has to rise again and put himself out of the shelters of work, the workshop, the fields, where as soon as it is that among the great distractions of the material things and the multiform chores of the day, thought can rise to God and to pray to him, while the breath of life infused from heaven penetrates the soul and makes it breathe the tendency to a future immortal life. Sunday must be the day of physical calm and spiritual elevation, not that of sporting excesses,
Wow.
or overly enjoyments, things
Mm.
that all exhaust and distract more than work on weekdays, and do not lead to God, but rather distance from him. It is perhaps not a cause for deep condolence that scenes and shows, and I think this is in reference to movies,
Oh, okay.
are sometimes shown to the faithful on Sundays, which we could call with St. Augustine this corruption and plague of souls, this overthrow of probity and honesty. Shows of which what the same holy doctor said of the immoral representations of his time, which in the first centuries of ancient Rome, when he still lived with greater naturalness and simplicity, would not have been tolerated. Sunday must be the
Yeah.
day that brings the family together, not the one that disintegrates it.
Oh. Oh, ouch. Ouch. Ah,
The day of spiritual reading and devoted prayer, not of dissipation. Oh my gosh.
that hurts. That's, that stings, man.
Because we know he's right, and just, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the, God, wow.
Yeah.
And his
Whew.
words are so, like, they pierce, too. It's not just that he's speaking the truth. He does it with such clarity
Yeah.
that
It's
you
it's
can't.
con it's convicting.
Yeah.
It's absolutely convicting, yeah. I heard a talk by Dr. Edward Shree once that was talking about this exact thing, about Sunday being a day of rest and, like, different expectations of what that looks like and how to bring the family together. And then obviously, working as a youth minister and a DRE, when he was talking about, like, sporting events, I was like, oof, like that was our competition, man. Like,
Yep.
we had our youth events, and if there was a football game or a soccer game or it was like, just cancel it,
Yeah.
honestly, because nobody's coming, and then, personally too, like, how are we having a day of rest or a day of like laziness, and it's like, is that going to bring you away from God?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
giving into sloth, or are you like finding finding activities that bring rest to your soul, and there's a difference, and so and doesn't Joseph Pieper have something, leisure as the basis of culture or something like that?
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't read it, but it's been recommended.
You need
So
to.
yeah,
Next
yeah,
time you go on a flight, that's a good like
yeah.
get
It's
yourself
a
get
short
yourself
read, right?
um I mean it's not very long. It's like 110 pages. There's the book also has a second essay um about philosophy and like the how leisure then leads to philosophy.
Oh,
Um
I like that.
because it gives us the space to be and to receive, and philosophy is to love wisdom, right? Which means that we have to look at something, but in order to look, we have to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Anyway, squirrels all over the place,
it's
but
it's worth a read, although it is a short read. I mean, it's a short book. It's not a short read.
oh, okay. One of the you have to
Hmm.
like stop every sentence and be like, "What?"
Well, it's not a
Yeah.
what. It's more like, okay, I gotta spend 30 minutes to like, or like 20 minutes now that I've read this truth to like let it sit.
Hmm.
Cause it's just sort of like this. It's one truth bomb after another truth bomb. And you're like,
Yeah.
you have to like sift through like, oh my gosh, now that I see this, I can see this and I can see this and I can see this. And it just like to really read it well, it requires a little bit more than just like reading a novel.
Yeah.
Um, then he continues, right, talking about the mass. If the body needs the material bread that supports it, the soul needs the supersubstantial bread which supports it, increases, and restores that strength in the various ages of life is necessary to persevere in the exercise of virtue and in victory over passions. The Church calls this heavenly convent, particularly on Sunday, the day par excellence of the Eucharistic celebration. The
Hmm.
obligation to hear Mass on holidays is serious. However, as often the churches are most deserted of men, scattered here and there of pious women, of caring mothers, and encouraged to return soon to the care of children, of devoted maids who shy away from brief moments from the ages of hard daily work to find the strength that will support them in the fate of their social condition. However, it is not worthy of a Christian to believe himself excused for the observance of this precept for any slight or insignificant reason, and one would like to think that the faithful would not act in this way if they had a clear, deep, burning idea of the Eucharistic mystery.
Whew.
Explain to them this redeeming sacrifice of the man God, center of all of the cult of the Catholic Church, to which basilicas, temples, oratories, altars are dedicated, places where the Lord is worshipped and prayed, towards which the invocations of all the Christian people rise in prosperity and danger, and in the triumphs and the misfortunes, in poverty and in wealth, in the calm and
Hmm.
process of events, as the people of Israel did around the Ark of the Covenant in the only temple in Jerusalem, symbol of the new and eternal testament concluded by Christ in the only in the truth of his flesh and blood. Explain to the people the meaning and dignity of the Catholic priesthood and start them to participate in the holy sacrifice with mercy and spiritual fruit. What value could social divine worship have if it
Hmm.
did not foster the participation of everyone and personal sanctification? Devotion is always, according to its notion, subjective, personal, because it matters a dedication and almost consecration of oneself to God by means of the practices of piety and assistance to the sacrifice, carried out in faith, hope, and charity, which intimately transforms the soul and unites it to God. A purely objective devotion, of which today we often speak, would be, to consider it rigidly, a transmutation of the true concept of devotion.
Yeah.
Like, you just like,
Wow.
I mean, and this isn't all, like, he's spitting fire over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I can imagine
That's
being a priest in
incredible.
1943, hearing the priest in Italian be like, man, like I need to step up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I feel, like
I love that.
I feel like a quarterback in the halftime
Yeah.
talk from the coach.
Yeah, man. It's like, yeah, I'm like, this is so convicting, but also like I'm amped, but also like, ouch, but this is
Yeah,
great. But and he's just speaking the truth. Like
yeah,
what a gift it would be if like this social worship
yeah,
was comprised of all of these people who have consecrated themselves to God fully. You know, like if like how like what would happen if every person in the Catholic Church was radically on fire with faith in the Eucharist? And I'm talking about myself. I'm like, man, like what could we do? Like
what
what
couldn't we do?
right, exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah,
like and for God and for the good of others and yeah, oh my gosh, like if each individual took that responsibility, right, and ran with it.
and I like how he
Man.
hits this, like, because I think when he's talking about this object and subjective devotion thing,
Right.
I think we perceive like going to church as the objectively good thing, which it is an
Yeah.
objectively good thing, right? But what makes that objectively good thing fruitful is the subjective entering in, right?
Mm.
The subjective action of the active participation, right? Even here, right? He's talking essentially. He didn't use the words, but he's using active, that idea of active
Yeah.
participation, right? That what value could social divine worship have if it did not foster participation of everyone and personal sanctification? Um,
Yeah.
that we enter into that, like, from our own self, that subjective experience, right? Which can only, we can put that on the priest, or we can put that on the music ministers, right?
Yeah.
That our subjective experience of the mass is receptive, right? That it's our subjective experience of the fruitfulness of the mass is dependent upon their, you know, and and I'm not saying that it can't, that the priest and the music ministers or the choir or whatever can't help in that subjective growth, right? Because it can,
Yeah.
but it's not dependent upon, right? That
Right.
subjective experience can only be dependent upon our interior.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It can be and should be fueled by the rest of the community, all of that community, the people next to us, the people behind us, the children, the old lady who's there every day. That our subjective experience of the life and the celebration of the mass, um and that builds, but it builds up together. And I think there's been talk of like a clericalism in the church, and I think that's part of the brokenness of that, is that
Mm.
my subjective experience is dependent upon how interesting the priest is.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, no. In fact, some of my, there's a favorite priest of mine that I love to listen to him preach and celebrate the Mass. Th- he, God bless him, he does not. There's no up and down, like monotone.
Yeah.
Like there's no
In the delivery,
inflection.
right?
Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
my dad called him the bumblebee priest. Buzz, 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 buzz,
Yeah.
buzz, buzz, buzz. Like
Yeah.
absolutely nothing. But what that did for me is that it took all of those kind of things that I expected to happen, and all I had were the words themselves and the
Right.
intention behind them.
Yeah.
And that's not saying that us priests can't grow to be better preachers, because we should.
Hmm.
um, or music ministers shouldn't continue to challenge themselves to grow both in the understanding of music and the understanding of the the wide breadth and depth of the music of the church, and share that with the congregation, because we should.
Yeah.
um, but that growth is also dependent upon the congregation as well. Like that's a
Right.
both and. It's not all on one or the other. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think, yeah, I had that thought. Like, it's so important to have community, and like the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith. But no one can foster your prayer life for you. That's something that, like, I felt convicted by, because I was like, I was like doing, there was like a season in life, I think it was like Lent, and I was doing like Exodus 90, and I was reading like Bible in a year, and I was like doing like just like a million devotions basically, but it
yeah,
was all like audio stuff, and it was like dependent on other things, and I was like, I feel like I need to I need to do more personally, like, to foster
right.
my own prayer life. Like, I felt convicted that I
Mm.
was like, man, like, what would my prayer life look like without devotions? Like, could I have a prayer life with just a Bible and and sacraments? Like, what would that look like? And and yeah, and then I felt very convicted in that. And so I love that. Yeah, I love that he's kind of saying it's like it's a both and. It's not an either or. It's not community, or it's not just prayer life, but the life of the church
Yeah.
exists with both, and that we have a personal responsibility to invest our time and energy into a relationship with Christ. And again, I'm speaking to myself. Like, this is
Yeah.
a daily battle to make that time with him, and to not rely too heavily on external sources and that's a huge, it's still a challenge today, so
Well, yeah, it's like a both and. The external sources are intended to encourage us and to strengthen us and lead us.
right, right,
Um, but we can't. And But it requires us to be also to be able to enter in. So to bring this back to the sacrifice of the Mass, right, and Christ, right? In the ancient times, the way that covenants were ratified were by the sacrifice of external things, right? A lamb, a bull,
right,
a
right.
bird, or wheat offerings or things like that, right? You would make an sacrifice that was external to yourself, but Christ transformed that, right, in the final covenant by making it an internal and personal sacrifice, right? It's no
Mm,
longer now the gift of something outside of ourselves, but rather our very self.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's so y'all. I encourage you to go look. We'll have the link of this document in the show notes. You'll have to use Google Translate to translate it into the English, because it's in Italian in the link. Um, but I encourage you to look at this and to pray with this. This will be some good spiritual reading for the rest of the summer. Or I guess we're recording this in the summer, but I think school year will have been started by the time this goes out.
Yeah.
So, um, but thank you for joining us this week, and I encourage you to like and subscribe on iTunes. or Spotify that does so much to help us reach as many people as possible. Also, check us out on the Catholic streaming at Theo, which has a whole host of Catholic streaming content and all sorts of other things. I encourage you to get into that. You can find our show notes probably below, but you can also find them on liturgyresourcespodcast.com. And you can find resources for liturgical music, especially settings for the Mass, new settings or settings for all 3 years of the responsorial psalms, as well as a liturgical planning guide at liturgyresources.com. The best way to interact with us is below in the comments on YouTube, on our Instagram at Liturgy Resources Podcast. Love y'all. Keep on singing.